Okay, got a really solid set this week. Mix of things, some I have zero hesitation about, one I've genuinely been going back and forth on all week, and the last one left me in that uncomfortable place where I think someone made the right call, but I still feel a little weird about it. 9 stories. Minecraft's going, let's do it. First one, and I need to share this because I felt genuinely terrible for this person while also kind of laughing. So this woman goes to a wedding with her boyfriend. His distant cousin's wedding. She has never met anyone there. Not the bride, not the groom, not a single person in the wedding party. She's just the supportive girlfriend trying to navigate a room full of total strangers. They walk in, and near the entrance, there's a woman in a beautiful, long pink gown greeting guests as they arrive. She's accepting flowers, hugging people, smiling warmly, totally central to everything happening. The poster, who again knows absolutely nobody in this building, makes what seems like a completely natural and reasonable assumption. This woman in the formal gown greeting people at the entrance is the bride. She walks up. Full congratulations package. You look absolutely beautiful. What a lovely day. How are you feeling? Everything you'd say to a bride you've just met for the first time at a wedding you walked into knowing nobody. The woman in the pink dress is the maid of honor. The actual bride was standing a few feet away in a white gown and heard the entire exchange. She got upset and started crying. The maid of honor immediately tried to smooth it over. The poster realized what had happened, apologized directly and sincerely and at length, and spent the rest of the event wishing she could disappear. And now, the boyfriend's family is saying she ruined the entire wedding. One of them has apparently been going around telling other guests that the poster did it on purpose to embarrass the bride on her wedding day. On purpose. To deliberately embarrass a woman she has never met in her life. At a wedding she had no possible reason to cause drama at. I just don't see how you get there. She walked into a room full of strangers, saw a woman in a formal gown stationed at the entrance greeting everyone, and made the most obvious inference available. That's not malice, that's just what you do. The bride being upset in the moment is completely understandable. It's a strange and disorienting thing to have happen on your wedding day. But the leap from honest mistake from a stranger who immediately apologized to she did it on purpose requires inventing a motivation that simply doesn't exist. Okay, next one, and I'll be up front. This one made me genuinely angry. I want to say that before I start because it's going to come through in how I tell it. 26-year-old woman. Her brother Tom, 36, is getting married to a woman named Sarah. He asks his sister to be a bridesmaid. She says yes, and she's actually happy about it. Over the following months, the costs pile up. The dress Sarah chose costs $800. Not a dress you'd wear again, $800 for something designed specifically for this wedding. Then there's the bachelorette weekend trip that the poster helps organize and contributes money to. Then hair and makeup the day of, which is mandatory for the whole bridal party. By the time everything is accounted for, she's spent well over $1,000 on this wedding. Then, a few weeks before the wedding, Sarah calls her. She's being removed from the wedding party. The reason? One of Sarah's friends, who had originally RSVP'd no to the wedding, changed her mind and decided she wanted to come after all. But the seating arrangements and the bridal party size were already locked in. So Sarah's solution was to take the poster's bridesmaid slot and hand it to this friend instead. The $800 dress, the bachelorette contributions, the months of being part of the planning process, all of it erased, and nobody offered to reimburse her a single dollar. Her brother called afterward and said he was sorry it worked out this way, but it was Sarah's wedding and Sarah's decision, and he supported her. He then said he hoped the poster would still come to the wedding and sit in the audience as a regular guest. Said it like that was a perfectly normal and reasonable thing to ask of someone you just cut from the wedding party after they spent over $1,000. She said no. She booked a vacation for the same weekend. Was she wrong? Absolutely not. The vacation was the correct response. She financially invested in this wedding as a bridesmaid. The dress alone was $800, and that's before the bachelorette and the day of expenses. She didn't do this as a guest who could step away. She did this as part of the wedding party. And then she was removed, not for anything she did, not for any conflict, not for any reason connected to her, because a late arrival needed a slot and hers was the one available. And after all of that, the ask was for her to come watch from the audience as if the money didn't happen, as if the months of involvement didn't happen. The vacation was not pettiness. The vacation was the only rational response. Tom going along with all of this without saying a single word in defense of his own sister is honestly the thing that bothers me most here. That's the conversation I'd want to have. You asked her to be in your wedding. She spent over $1,000. She got cut for someone else. And your response was to hope she'd still come watch. This next one I genuinely keep going back and forth on, which is unusual for me. This woman has been a strict vegan for several years. Not just dietary, it's an ethical position for her. Her boyfriend's older brother recently got engaged to a woman named Claire, and a celebration dinner was organized at a restaurant. The poster went with her boyfriend. She sat down, looked at the menu, and there was nothing she could eat. Not one dish. Every option on the entire menu had meat, dairy, or eggs in some form. She told her boyfriend. He suggested maybe she could pick at the side dishes or just eat around the main ingredients. She said she'd try. She sat there for about 20 minutes, doing her best. She had a glass of water while everyone around her had dinner. Eventually, she told her boyfriend quietly that she was going to head home, hoped he'd enjoy the rest of the evening, and left without making any kind of announcement or scene. She didn't say anything to the hosts, she just slipped out. The brother called her boyfriend the next day, said she'd made Claire feel terrible on what was supposed to be a special evening, that walking out after 20 minutes was obviously a statement, that she should have just managed for a couple of hours or eaten beforehand. The boyfriend is now asking her to apologize. Here's where I keep landing. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't announce her departure. She just left quietly when it became clear she was going to sit there with a glass of water for 2 hours while everyone else ate. That part I genuinely understand. But, and I think this matters, leaving any celebration dinner after 20 minutes, even silently, is going to register as something to the people hosting it. That's just the reality of how it reads from the outside, regardless of your intent. What actually bothers me most about this whole story is the question of how nobody knew. If she's been around this family long enough to be attending engagement dinners, her dietary needs should have come up at some point. Either she needed to communicate them more clearly, or they needed to ask. Some combination of both, probably. If someone had checked the menu in advance, none of this exists as a story. I don't think she owes Claire an apology for having a diet. I do think there's some communication work to do on multiple sides here. All right, this next one, zero ambiguity from me on this one. I want to say that up front before I even start, because I want to be clear that I'm not hedging. This person is on vacation abroad with their whole family. Parents, a sibling, their sibling's spouse, the whole group. They are the only person in the group who speaks the local language with any real fluency. Everyone else relies on them to communicate. They're at a restaurant. Service is a bit slow. One order comes out slightly wrong. These are entirely normal restaurant things that happen everywhere. But the family immediately starts treating the poster as a real-time grievance translator. Every complaint, every impatient remark, every sarcastic comment anyone wants to make about the service, directed at the poster, expected to be immediately translated and delivered to the staff. The parents want the staff told how long they've been waiting. The sibling wants to know why the order was wrong. Someone wants to know about the bread. It's constant, and the poster is stuck in the middle of it, eating their own meal between rounds of complaint relay. After a while, they say, "I'm happy to help if something genuinely needs to be fixed, but I'm not translating every complaint and comment for the entire meal. I'm here to eat too." The family goes quiet and then gets irritated, says the poster is being unhelpful. The meal ends awkwardly. Helping your family communicate in a language they don't speak is a kind and generous thing to do. Being treated as a full-time complaint translation service for the duration of a meal, relaying every bit of impatience to staff who are just doing their jobs, is a completely different thing. The poster drew a very reasonable line. Real problems, yes. Commentary, no. Help when it matters. Don't relay every passing complaint. If you're visiting somewhere where you don't speak the language, some patience with things that take longer or go slightly differently is part of the experience. The poster offered to help when it actually mattered. They weren't refusing to translate the whole night. They weren't being difficult. They said, "If something genuinely needs fixing, I'll do it. But I am not going to relay every piece of impatience and frustration that comes out of everyone's mouth for the entire duration of dinner." That is a completely reasonable position. Being the only person in a group who speaks a language is useful and worth being grateful for. It doesn't make you a professional complaint relay service. It doesn't obligate you to spend your own dinner advocating for your family's impatience to a restaurant staff that is just doing their job. Okay, roommate situation. This is one of those where the setup sounds like it might be ambiguous, and then you hear all the details, and it actually isn't. Two-bedroom apartment. The roommate and the poster have known each other for a few years. The arrangement has worked fine. Then the roommate starts dating someone new. The boyfriend starts coming around. At first, it's occasional, a few nights here and there. Then 2 nights a week becomes 3, 3 becomes 4, 4 becomes 5. At this point, the poster says the boyfriend is there essentially every weeknight, and most weekends he's there from Friday through Sunday. He showers every morning before work. The poster runs into him in the hallway with wet hair on a daily basis. He eats from the shared fridge and pantry regularly. He uses the electricity, the internet, the water. The poster has come home to find him alone in the living room watching television while the roommate is still at work. Just him, by himself, in someone else's apartment. The poster brings it up with the roommate, suggests that if her boyfriend is essentially living there, it might be fair for him to contribute something, toward utilities, toward household groceries, anything. They weren't asking for half the rent, just something to acknowledge the situation. The roommate immediately gets defensive, says she pays her share of the lease, and what she does in her bedroom is her own business. What she does in her bedroom, sure. What her functionally moved-in boyfriend does in the shared living room, kitchen, and bathroom every single day is a separate question. There are 3 people occupying this apartment. The poster's ask was modest, calm, and completely reasonable. The reaction to it is more telling than anything. And someone who has essentially moved into a shared space without paying for it probably knows, on some level, that this conversation was always going to happen eventually. The poster didn't spring this on anyone. They waited until it was undeniable, and then raised it as reasonably as you possibly could. Short one next. I'm going to keep this brief because it genuinely doesn't need much explanation. The poster has a nephew, 15 years old, who has been pretty vocal about wanting a specific gaming console for a while. Mentioned it at family dinners, brought it up with the poster directly. The poster has an older model of that console sitting around. Works perfectly, just a previous generation. They decide to sell it. List it online, get an offer, sell it. Done. The nephew finds out and is upset. Says he thought he was going to get it. Says the poster should have offered it to him first. The nephew's parents back him up, say it was inconsiderate to sell to a stranger when a family member clearly wanted it. But here's the thing. The nephew never asked. Not once. Nobody in the family ever approached the poster and said, "Hey, when you're done with that, could he have it?" Or even, "Would you want to sell it to us?" There was no conversation, no offer made, no promise given, not even a casual mention. Just a teenager who assumed he'd eventually receive something that nobody ever said he would receive. That's not an agreement. That's an assumption. The poster sold their own property to someone who offered to pay a fair price for it. That's just how selling things works. If the expectation in this family is that things get offered to relatives before being sold, that expectation needs to be communicated, not just assumed. And honestly, even if the nephew had expressed interest directly at some point, the poster still would have been within their rights to sell it. It was their console. They decided what to do with it. Okay, this one, and I want to be upfront about this. I went back and forth on more than any of the others. Let me explain why. This person's dad is getting remarried. He divorced their mom when the poster was around 10. The dad has been with his current partner, Linda, for about 6 years now. The poster has met Linda at holidays, family dinners, occasional events over the years. They describe it as a perfectly civil relationship. No tension, no animosity, just genuinely no real connection. She's their dad's partner. That's the extent of it. Dad announces the wedding and makes clear he really wants the poster there. Poster thinks about it and says they'd rather not go. Not to make any kind of statement. Not because they have any objection to Linda. Not to ruin the day. They just genuinely don't feel emotionally invested in this wedding. Don't have the kind of relationship with Linda that would make it a meaningful celebration for them, and don't want to sit through a long wedding day performing a happiness they don't actually feel. The dad is hurt. Says this is one of the most important days of his life, and he needs his kid there. Says family shows up regardless of how you personally feel. That's what being family means. Here's where I land after thinking about it. My gut instinct is always that showing up for people matters, and a parent's wedding is a significant thing to skip. And that's a completely valid position. But the poster isn't refusing out of anger, or to punish their dad, or to make it about themselves. They're saying, I can't genuinely be present for this because I don't have the emotional connection to it. And honestly, is going and being a hollow, clock-watching presence for 6 hours better? I'm not sure it is, at least not for anyone involved. Whether this is the right call really depends on what kind of relationship the poster wants with their dad going forward. Not going will cost something there. The dad is going to feel that absence, and it will probably show up in how they relate to each other afterward. But going and being a hollow, checked-out presence for 6 hours is its own kind of thing to sit with, too. There's no clean version of this story where nobody gets hurt. The poster seems to genuinely understand that. They're not being careless about it. They're just trying to figure out which version of hurt they can live with. I don't think I can tell them which one that is. Quick one, and I've been thinking about it more than I should, honestly. This person's coworker is also a genuine friend outside work. They text regularly, go to lunch together most days, have met up on weekends a few times. So this is a real friendship, not just a surface-level work relationship. The coworker recently started a diet and is clearly very invested in it, which is completely fine. But every single day at lunch, for months now, the diet has become the entire conversation. Calories, goals, what she's allowing herself, whether she was good over the weekend, her target weight, whether her clothes are fitting differently. Every day. The poster is not bothered by the diet itself. They haven't said a word about it for months. They're not judging any of the choices made. They've just reached a point where sitting through 45 minutes of daily calorie counts and goal updates every single weekday has genuinely worn them down. At some point, even the most patient person hits a wall with a single topic, especially one that comes up every single day. They say something one day, gently, not a critique of the diet, nothing about the coworker's body or choices, just, I care about you, but I need a bit of a break from the diet talk every day. Can we just chat about other stuff sometimes? The coworker says she feels judged. Okay. The poster said nothing about the diet being wrong, nothing about her body, nothing about her goals. They said they needed a break from one specific topic. I feel judged is attaching a meaning to that request that wasn't in it. Close friendships don't have unlimited capacity for any single topic, no matter what it is. The poster said it kindly and kept it entirely about themselves. No critique of the diet, no comment on the person, just, I personally need a break from this topic. That's exactly how you're supposed to raise something like this. The fact that the coworker's first response was to feel judged, rather than to just say, oh, sorry, of course, is actually interesting in itself. It suggests she already knows on some level that the topic has been a lot, which makes the poster's request even more understandable, not less. Last one. This genuinely made me a little uncomfortable, which is usually a good sign. This person travels for work frequently, and their company covers business class on long-haul routes. This particular flight was 14 hours, overnight red-eye, the kind where the gap between arriving rested and arriving completely wrecked is measured in seat type. They've done this exact route before. They have a very specific and personal understanding of what it means to be in business class versus economy for 14 hours in the middle of the night. Business class was booked well in advance. They were settled in and ready. Not long after takeoff, a flight attendant comes to their row. She explains that there's an older couple in economy who are seated separately from each other and would really appreciate it if someone in business class would be willing to swap, just to let them be in the same section and be able to see each other during the flight. The poster says no. They paid for business. The couple paid for economy. Swapping means voluntarily giving up a flatbed on a 14-hour overnight flight. They politely decline. The flight attendant nods and moves on. But a few minutes later, the woman from the couple, the poster estimates she's in her late 60s or early 70s, actually walks up the aisle from economy and comes directly to their seat. She introduces herself warmly, explains that she and her husband are celebrating their anniversary, that it would mean so much to them to be closer to each other during the flight. She's gracious, not pushy, just genuinely asking. The poster still says no. And I want to sit with that for a second, because this is where it gets genuinely complicated. She walked from economy all the way up to business class on a moving airplane to ask a stranger, personally. She introduced herself. She explained the situation calmly and warmly. She wasn't rude. She wasn't demanding. She was just asking. The poster still said no. For the rest of the flight, a couple of nearby passengers glance at them occasionally. The couple had apparently mentioned what happened to someone around them. Were they wrong? No, I want to be clear about that, and I want to say it carefully. Nobody is obligated to voluntarily downgrade from a paid business class seat to economy on a 14-hour red-eye so that a couple who didn't book business class can be closer together. The couple had options when they booked their tickets. The poster didn't create this situation and doesn't have a responsibility to solve it at their own expense. But I'd be lying if I said the anniversary context didn't get to me. This is one of those situations where being correct and feeling good about it are genuinely two different things. The poster made the right call. It still doesn't feel great to say that out loud. And I think that discomfort is actually the honest response to this one. Sometimes the correct answer and the comfortable answer aren't the same. The poster didn't do anything wrong. But the image of that woman walking up the aisle from economy to ask a stranger on her anniversary, that sticks around. All right, that's everything for today. 9 stories this week: a misidentified bride, a bridesmaid who got cut and went on vacation anyway, a vegan who walked out of an engagement dinner, a very tired family translator, a boyfriend who basically moved in without paying for it, a gaming console that got sold before the nephew could assume his way into getting it for free, a dad's second wedding that nobody wants to go to, a diet that got discussed one too many times at lunch, and an anniversary couple who really should have booked business class. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. More coming soon. See you next time.